everyone. I'm Kareem Rae, your host at the One Soccer Nation podcast. Today, I have the pleasure of interviewing Guilherme von Cüpper. Can you please introduce yourself to our audience?
Thank you so much, Kareem. First of all, it's a pleasure to be here. A few weeks after we met in person for the first time in SoccerX Miami. So I'm Guilherme von Cüpper, like you said, really well. A difficult name to pronounce. It's a little bit of a mix. I'm a mix of Portuguese with German, Brazilian, so kind of a big mix. But it's a pleasure to be here. I am one of the directors of the Berlin Sports Group. We are a group with headquarters in Germany, in Berlin, and also with offices in Portugal, in Lisbon. And we work mainly in intermediation, so typically an agency, Berlin Sports Bridge for Talents. And then we also have a consultancy company, Berlin Sports Consulting, so all kinds of football investment in clubs, etc. And then we have Berlin Sports Law, which is a leading sports law firm worldwide that represents several players and clubs around the globe. And myself, then besides the group, I'm also personally, I would say, a people connector, lecturer also in several conferences, universities. So I love to speak about global football management, how to connect intermediation, sports law, negotiation. So I think that's a bit of myself.
Amazing. Lots to discuss about. It was great to meet you
Definitely.
back in Miami Soccer X this year. I got a chance to listen into your panel and obviously meet you in person, which was very nice. And now we're doing the panel, sorry, the podcast, which it's amazing to have you on and spend a bit more one-on-one time with you, learn more about yourself, what you do, and about the beautiful game. So looking forward to it and appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you so much, Kareem. My pleasure.
So one of my favorite questions I love to ask my guests is, could you just take us back in time and share how you got involved in the beautiful game?
Sure. So I would say kind of a strange path. And this is something that I always love to share every time I lecture with students and with people also in the industry and in panels. Exactly to show that your path can be different, I would say, but in the end, you'll be exactly in the place where you should be. Because so I did my law degree in Portugal, in Lisbon. To be honest, so since a young age, I knew I wanted to connect people, I wanted to negotiate, I want to be kind of representing or a brand, or in this case, a country, because when I went to my law degree, my main idea would be to be in diplomacy. So I wanted to become a diplomat. I wanted to basically be able to participate in government meetings, discussing interesting issues for the country, representing the country. This was always something that was also in the blood of my family. From my father's side, we had a few ones in the family. So I always thought about this. But during my law degree, I kind of started to be more redirected to becoming more of a traditional lawyer. Traditional, not in a way of being more in litigation or in court, but in the sense that I was being more directed to working in a law firm. So when I ended my law degree, I got an invitation to go to Garrigues, which is one of the leading one of the leading law firms in Europe, not in sports, so they work in several areas. And my area, the one that I was invited to, was to work in M&A, M&A and corporate law. So nothing to do with football, nothing to do with sports. Typically, company transactions, raising of share capitals, mergers, acquisitions. So this was what I was involved. And to be honest, I think it was really interesting to give me some background, to give me like the first steps into negotiation as well. But at the same time, I missed the real one-on-one negotiation, traveling, meeting new people. So something was definitely off. After Garrigues, which was a great experience, I went to REN, which is the Portuguese. It's a listed company in Portugal, also a big one here. I was advising for the board of directors and the audit committee. So my main role was kind of communication with the stock markets, communication with the companies where we had a share, so representing them, which was something also really interesting, but still something was still exactly not there. And after I had this experience, so kind of the possibility also to network, the possibility to connect people, I got an invitation from Georg and Jan, which are the owners of the company for many, many years now, from Berwin Sports, exactly to so the role seemed a bit like this is kind of too interesting to be true, because what they were asking was exactly what I thought I was shaped for, because they asked for someone that would speak languages, that would have a legal background, and had already some experience on the on negotiation side, etc., which I was doing for the companies and the firm I was before. But then they asked for someone with a big passion for football. That was my case, but until that moment, this was 8 years ago that now I entered the industry. I'm 36 now. So 8 years ago, I got this invitation, and they said passion for football, a possibility to travel, and I was like, okay, this seems really interesting. I always looked at football as one of my main interests, but never as a potential work. And then the moment we got together, we immediately had a big synergy, symbiosis, let's call it like that. We definitely saw that we had a lot in common. So I went to Berlin for 2 months in a row, being prepared also to understand more about the industry and articulating my competencies already, but more with the football background. So a little bit of notions of sports law, of sports consulting, etc., and of the industry. Let's call it like this, because at the time we were mainly targeting consulting and law firm. We were still not. We already had many clients in several top leagues like in the Bundesliga, Premier League, etc. But we were mainly focusing on legal issues and consulting issues. The intermediation and the agency part came later already with me, but they said, look, we need someone that would actually be able to release us some time to work on other fields. So they wanted me to come to Lisbon, establish the an office here, bringing the entire law firm also to start to work from here, or several of the international sports lawyers we have, and then after being settled, focusing on targeting new areas and basically releasing me, which is I think my major skill, which is actually traveling, connecting people, finding new fields of within football. And it's been a journey these last 8 years, from the law firm and the consulting sides until founding our agency 4 years ago, where we are basically working worldwide. So we had already in the consulting and the law firm a really interesting niche, because we were working with, and right now we are working with around 2,000 clubs and players worldwide, from several legends in football to several top clubs. But then basically opening the connections we already have to enter also the intermediation and investment in football part of it was really a challenge. And I'm really happy with the way the transition has been going.
That's amazing. I mean, after we had met in Miami, you went to Saudi Arabia for World Football Summit, and
Exactly.
you traveled to a few other countries as well. So you traveled a lot. I mean, so you started this position at the age of 28. You've been in it for the last 8 years, so 36. How many times would
Exactly.
you have traveled around the world?
Oof, a lot of times, I would say so, because it's one of the things I love the most, which
Yeah,
is the possibility to connect people, the possibility to also understand new realities. So, of course, with the consulting and with the law firm, we have been traveling already a lot to meet clients.
right.
Like I said, we have our clients. We have the particular situation in the law firm that we represent clubs like Borussia Dortmund or Nottingham Forest in legal proceedings, training rights, case disputes, etc. But then at the same time, we also can, for example, represent solidarity contribution or training compensation payment for a club in a small club in Ghana. So we had the possibility to travel a lot to really meet our clients, to see what are their needs, Also, we entered into the field of helping a lot of ex-football players with some issues concerning that career, that transition of their careers, meaning that we had several legends that we are working on, from people like Fred Adu in the US to Ricardo Quaresma, for example, here in Portugal, or Las Diarra. So we had this opportunity to go worldwide, from all countries in Europe to Saudi Arabia, the US, but then also to really the to do really a tour in Africa, countries like Ghana, Gambia, Senegal, South Africa, Ivory Coast, Nigeria. So we have traveled all of these countries to try to make an impact in football, and also find a way to connect all our clients together, because we reached a certain point that we said, look, if we have all these big clubs and players on one hand, but at the same time we also know the brands, some of the football stakeholders, and we have this presence, for example, in Africa, then why don't we add to our agency a niche which is also helping the top clubs to find their ways into African players? So in this particular sense, we developed a big scouting network also in Africa. So it was a privilege also to see the work there, and to go personally and also see some of the tournaments, some of the academies and clubs that we are partnering there. And then we are bringing some of these talents to the US, to the Middle East, to several leagues in Europe as well. And I really like when we do this, let's say, crazy transfers. So transfers to Venezuela, to India, to South Africa, to Turkey, or to the more regular leagues like Croatia, Sweden, Germany, Portugal. So it's one of my favorite parts of the job for sure. And for example, now I've been speaker in SoccerX Miami. If I haven't been there, I hadn't met you. We had a really interesting discussion about how to also do some stuff together, and how to participate also in the podcast and share a bit of the experience. So these trips are exactly what we need in order to meet all these people.
Absolutely. I met a guy back at Soccer X in Miami that had traveled 392 times in 1 year across the United States. He's an insurance guy, but he's also owns a USL 2 club. So that was the first time having meeting someone that had traveled that much. So I'm pretty sure your numbers are probably reaching out to those.
Not as big as that, I would say,
Yeah. Lots of travel.
really interesting.
I gotta ask you, with traveling so much, how do you, because your body could start to get stiff, you're sitting on the plane for long hours. What advice would you give to me in regards to consistently traveling? How do you stay healthy, and what do you do to be able to travel a lot?
Um, I gotta be honest. I'll try to give you the theory. Then the practical part of it sometimes doesn't work so much, but at least I try. I think the most important part is you have a tendency when you are traveling a lot to end up in fast food places, to basically stop your gym routines, I would say. And I always try, at least as much as I can, to, if I'm in an hotel that has a gym, at least trying before a conference or before a meeting, going there and trying to work out, even if it's 20 minutes, 25, but then at a good pace. You can already feel that your body responding well to it. Trying to make some healthy options here and there in order to replace the fast food. But to be honest, sometimes it's hard, because sometimes we really have not a lot of time between meetings or between trips, and then sometimes you need to go to the more unhealthy option. I am lucky that Cindy, my girlfriend, she actually loves everything connected to fitness, etc. So she's always trying to give me the right tips of food and of training when I have these little times. But I mean, trying as much as we can to avoid getting into that routine of constantly eating unhealthy and not working out. So I think it's the only way, or the only advice I can give. I hope I can follow it more.
Absolutely. You had mentioned that you speak multiple languages. How crucial has that been? What has been the importance of being able to speak multiple languages in your travels with negotiating and doing business in other countries?
I think it's extremely important. Not long ago, I read a book from Trevor Noah, Born a Crime. Really interesting, about the time of the apartheid, because when he was born, It was back in the days that actually a multiracial marriage or a multiracial son in this case was still forbidden, and he was saying that he always grew a little bit with that thing. Look, where do I belong? Like being like a mixed person. It was hard back then, and he was saying that in his eyes, what really made a difference for him to be able to connect with everyone and had the opportunities that he also had, besides of course his hunger for life and to do things, was exactly that he always tried to speak the language. So he was like, if I would go to someone and I would speak in Afrikaans, they would say like, okay, we're not expecting this. So immediately there's kind of a feeling of belonging, or a feeling of, okay, let me hear this guy. He's speaking in my language, but he was doing the same if he would speak with someone like with a Zulu. He would speak Zulu dialect. If he would be with the Xhosa, he would do exactly the same thing, or English. So I feel a bit the same, even if it's a small words, because I speak a few languages, Spanish, French, English, but I don't speak, for example, Arabic. But only by learning a few sentences or a few words, I notice that people really are like, okay, he's making an effort to speak in my language, and this really unblocks a lot of things. And then, of course, especially the main language, imagine if you speak English and French, you basically cover the entire market of Africa, for example, because most are English and French speaking countries. So I think it's really important. And I always advise young agents and not only agents, young people that wants to work more into in a business perspective or into connecting people or make deals. I think learning languages is really a main bridge, and hopefully in the future this will be more and more an asset that the agents think that they will have, as other assets that will have time to speak in the later in the meeting, in the podcast. But I think that the agent of the future is an agent that speaks languages, that has some notions of psychology, mental health, nutrition, scouting, data, surround himself also with the right people, financial advisors, lawyers, sports lawyers. I think this is really important, and has to be in consideration if you want to be successful in the business.
Absolutely. You had mentioned early on in the intro, sports law, business consulting, talent management. Which space do you spend most of your time in?
I try to navigate a little bit the free. So what I try usually to do, imagine I will go tomorrow to Soccer X again in Miami. So in this case, for example, I mean, I had the part where I was a speaker, so I had to prepare my lecture. But at the same time, I was like, okay, so what are my main goals with this trip? This club, this president, this brand are going to be there. So maybe the brand X would be really interesting for our sports consulting, because we have one or two clubs in our network that are looking forward to find new profits revenues. So they want to connect with certain brands connected to this or that. And then at the same time, we see, okay, these clubs are there and they're in a particular market where I see that my players would fit really well. So I also want to speak with them. And this is more connected to the agency. But then at the same time, for example, you know that you have a federation there, and you help similar federations with legal issues, and maybe it will be cool to pitch them also working together on, or helping them also with some of their legal stuff. So I think that I always try to analyze the market or analyze where I'm going and see which parts of the company make sense at a specific time. But then at the same time, I always like to take this time to also think out of the box. And this is the cool part, which is, okay, then maybe we have this and these people that I have no idea how we can work together. It's not like clear, but then they are so interesting because of their conversation or because their position or because of their path, that I definitely want to connect with them, because maybe together we'll have some synergies. Maybe together we'll think about creating something new. And this is also one of the things that I love, always being able to do this. And I'm going to give you an example. We kept more in these free businesses, but just recently we come up with the idea, which is one of the ideas, I would say, like one of the life ideas of one of our owners, which is create an academy. So we are creating what we call the Bridge for Talents Academy, which will be in Berlin, and it's like a camp ID. And our main idea is giving an opportunity to all kids to come to Berlin for a few days, be with Bundesliga scouts, with Bundesliga teams, and have the possibility to come back to their club, their academy, or their parents with a full ID report with an international experience. So this is one of the things. A summer school, for example, we are now establishing soon to prepare the leaders for the future in football management topic. So we are always trying to think about new ways to enhance football, to promote football, and meeting new people with new ideas is always a big part of it.
Absolutely, especially with all the different technology, globalization, AI, there's different ways to scout technologies to collect data from players to make decisions. So, what do you believe are the most critical factors in identifying emerging soccer stars, and how has the talent scouting landscape changed over the years in your perspective?
Think it's so important, Kareem, to be honest. And we saw clearly these developments, I would say, in the recent years. Even yesterday, I was having lunch with one of the analysts of the Qatar Stars League. He's Portuguese, Mauro Saraiva, and he was exactly telling me how the paradigm we have changed even within, for example, the Qatar League. So the way they are using data to analyze the league internally and externally. So on the scouting level, which is bringing new top talents to the league or locating the best players for the teams, but at the same time, a bit the other way around, which is looking on what they already have in the league and trying to actually provide with the clubs with the most accurate information about, okay, who are the players that make sense here and then, who are the players performing, and only data can provide this kind of information. And then, of course, all this new, it's something you see every time you go to a new conference. Now I would say that maybe 80% of the stands that are there are focusing on digital. So scouting platforms, ID platforms and brands. Also, even for example, these platforms like Transfer Room that are even connecting now players with clubs, arranging transfers. So all of this, I think, is the future of football. And of course, that we cannot say that the eye should be replaced. And of course, are really coaches and people that have an eye for talent. But we need also to change maybe the perception of these more traditional people in football that AI, data, the new platforms, digital, they are not coming to haunt us, and they are not coming to take people out of the market. They are coming to actually add more expertise because the world is developing and football needs to develop with the rest of the world. And hopefully, I think this is what we'll see in the next years. So we as agents, we also need to be making sure that we work with the right platforms, with the right people, that we have the right data, because in the end, this will also be really interesting for our players because we need to be able to maybe have a conversation with the player and not saying, look, you scored a goal, you didn't score a goal. You had a great, no, maybe they had a fantastic match. And if we look at the data, we say, okay, these guys maybe had 98% tackles, successful tackles throughout the match. Maybe he was not so visible, but he had this and that. So all of this even helps the agents and people involved in football on giving more accurate information. So it needs to be supported and it's clearly shaping football and will shape it in the next years.
Yep. AI is touching all industries, but to focus on soccer, I mean, or football, the other thing too is like not everyone's going to get access to AI. And not only that, different types of AI and their capacities, etc. So, I mean, it is definitely a competitive advantage to uh, different companies that are using the technology to enhance their scouting or their company in whatever form they're using the AI to. With saying that, are you guys currently using AI or are you guys working with AI companies?
We are trying to also feed the team with the right tools so they are able to work. So what we are now doing is kind of a market analysis. We are already working with a few scouting platforms, data platform, and also we have been meeting several people in order to be able to also find the right ones. What we have been seeing is even some of the companies that we used to work, they are now starting to add AI or starting basically to do like the 2.0 versions, or their apps are already considering AI. So I still don't see it so visible at this point with the ones we are working, but also some of the ones we are working, they already mentioned clearly that AI will be in their development versions in the future. And I'm really curious to also see. I mean, I would not consider myself the most technological guy ever. For me, technology is being in the computer, replying to emails and being on Instagram. But I would say that that definitely we need to pay more attention to it, and also surround ourselves with the right professionals that can help us achieve the best results and the best use of these tools.
Understood. In regards to player transfers, players could range from, selling for $1 million to $100 million plus. If you can share or disclose information on the biggest transfer that you've worked on, and in what capacity were you able to assist, and maybe splash in the dollar amount, but if not, that's fine. But it'd be
Of course.
cool to hear a story of the the biggest player transfer that you've worked on.
No, you've participated in some big ones. I would say that you have kind of two separate sides. So we have a few players that we work. We always try, and this is always an advice I give to all the agents, which is one of the most important things is actually knowing what you are negotiating. So, and also don't burn the good relationship you've created with clubs under a bad negotiation. What I mean is, unfortunately, there are a lot of intermediaries in the market, most of them not licensed. There are a lot of people presenting players that are not contractualized with them. So what we try to do is we 100% only present to the clubs and the stakeholders we work players that are one of two or under an exclusive representation contract with our agency, knowing that okay, we are always open to work with anyone that would come to us, but at the same time we need to have the trust that we are the ones in control. Because if I go to a club which, for example, is a good contact of mine for many years, I cannot burn my relationship to them to present something that I don't have control or I don't have exactly the right conditions. Then we have the second way to do it, which is if there are really interesting players, even if they are big ones that are already, for example, in one of the biggest agencies in the world, I'll be okay to also share some of my network and my contacts if actually I have a specific mandate to present him in a certain place. So we had a lot of exclusive players we are transferring right now to places like Super League Turkey, to places like Super League India, Swedish League, Croatian League, Portugal, USL. We are now negotiating also a few players with MLS. But then at the same time, what we are having is, since I have this close connection with so many top footballers from my legal part of it, what happens many times is that they connect me with their agents as well. So people that I'm not exclusive with, but at the same time, they know that I have one or two access to specific markets that maybe they don't have. For example, right now I have been building a really good relationship with the market in Saudi, in Qatar, etc. So some of the agents, even some big ones that don't have so much of the connections there, maybe they say, "Look, I represent this top player. I want to make a deal, and I think you probably have the right access to this specific market." And I had the opportunity. I cannot mention the name right now, but an example was, and I think we still be able to do it. Maybe who knows next summer, but one of the biggest players in the world, we were negotiating him to Saudi Arabia last year. We had several meetings with several people connected to the club, to the league, trying to make it happen. In the end, this was not able to be done, but it was crazy to see, for example, one of the top players in Europe and his passion and being so eager to go to Saudi football. A player that right now is in an age that is absolutely at the top of his game in one of the biggest clubs in Europe, and still he said clearly that with the right offer he would go, not only because of the money, but because he also thinks that Saudi is one of the leagues of the future. So it's interesting to see that the players not we cannot be hypocritical. The money is also really important, but at the same time, a lot of players want actually to have challenges, and maybe the challenge is not Europe anymore. And this, I would say, it's a good example of how global the world is right now, and how you can actually be able to make, I would say, crazy deals in crazy markets with crazy amounts. And the connections that we've been establishing are getting us more and more close also of maybe having one of my main goals, of course, is maybe in the next 1 2 years be able to have one of the top three transfers in the world. This will be what we are aiming and what we look for. So hopefully that will be one of the next steps for us.
That's amazing. Me personally, I didn't know about Saudi Arabia until they started to invest in sports or, soccer specifically for me or
Yeah.
football. Uh, Maybe a few years back now, it's fresh to me. But now I keep hearing about Saudi Arabia World Football Summit. But you had mentioned Saudi being the future league, the league of the
Mhm.
future. Could you share more insights on in regards to your perspective and how that's possible and what
Mhm.
they are doing differently to differentiate themselves from other leagues that are successful, like the EPL?
Mhm. Well, I would say that first of all, I would also put I was speaking now about Saudi, but I'll also put US football and MLS in that category of leagues to look for the future.
Uh,
Already, of course, a big league with big players, but I think MLS have been doing a really interesting work, specifically also concerning all the part of media, branding, etc., to actually promote the league. They did something really clever, which I think is also what Saudi tried to copy a little bit, which is the same way the MLS brought before Beckham or Ibrahimovic, Saudi brought now Ronaldo. And when Ronaldo went to Saudi, everyone called him crazy. But the truth is that he opened the door for so many top players. And now you go to Saudi and you see players like Karim Benzema, Sadio Mane, Ronaldo, but not only players ending the careers, I would say, because you also have players like Milinkovic, Savic, so players that actually still are in a performing. They could still be playing in any European club, and they decided to play there. Benfica had a striker, Marcos Leonardo. He was 22 years old, I think 21 when he came. He was seen by everyone like one of the strikers of the future here in Europe. And he decided after 1 year in Benfica, not to go to other club where he had offer in Europe, but actually with 22 being sold to Al Hilal for 30 million euros. So you can see that this is more and more a path. US has also these examples of catching these top players at an early age, like you did, for example, with Thiago Almada and a few others. And what I think also the US and Saudi are doing well is, for example, something that when was the boom of China, for example, we clearly didn't see it, which was not only you are paying good salaries, more in the case of Saudi because they don't have the limitations in terms of budget, not only budget of the cost, but also of the league. So the roofs that you have in the league, they don't have most of the times there. So not only are bringing players with high amounts and high salaries, but also looking into the facilities, one, and looking into the youth development. I had the opportunity now in Saudi to visit a few academies on some of the big clubs. I actually met someone that we became really nice, really good friends, and he's a technical director, for example, of Al Hilal. So we had the opportunity to go into the facilities, know a little bit, and you see the development that is being done. You see the conditions that are there. You see they are now also focusing a lot on building the Saudi young players. So they are really taking a huge leap of faith into preparing the youth teams of these big clubs into becoming top players. So not only they are like, for example, in China, bringing good players in a crazy deal, but like not with a specific thinking. They are doing it, but at the same time, they are reinvesting a lot of the money that they have into, like I said, youth programs, youth facilities, and academies. So and stadiums, of course. So it helped to have it's curious because you see Qatar. I mentioned Saudi, but I could mention Qatar. Qatar is building fantastic stadiums. Qatar is also taking care that their academies are developing more and more, and they had a World Cup. And you can clearly see that now Saudi is doing the same, and they will have a World Cup, the same way US is going to have a World Cup. So I think that it's not just a random situation. It's actually making sure that some of the most of the biggest emerging markets they will have the opportunity to showcase their football for the world. And I really think that with the way they are structuring things, they're really able to in the future really be really triumph. Also, they are doing something really interesting, which is they are bringing a lot of expertise from abroad, and they have no problem to do it. If you look into some of the CEOs, coaches, technical directors of academies, etc., a lot of them are Portuguese, Spanish, Germans, etc., etc. So they are not thinking about, okay, we need to do it this only with the Saudis. No, they are really bringing expertise. Of course, it's still most of the top deciders are members of the royal family or people with a lot of power within the country, but they are really delegating also in their expertise in top people in the industry. The same way, like I said, I think the US need to continue to compete. I think you are also doing a good job on preparing some youth players that you now even are selling to Europe. So this is starting to be more a reality. Also, a lot of work to be done, of course, I would say, in order to bring a bigger engagement between the fans and the clubs, in order to increase the competitiveness of the league. But I think it's going on the right path.
You mentioned Saudi Arabia having a World Cup. When is that?
Sorry.
So, Saudi Arabia having a World Cup. When is that going to be? What year?
It will be in 2034.
2034. Wow. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay. So
exactly.
you're speaking my language now. American soccer, the United States. 80% of my contacts are American based, 20% international. And you had mentioned the 2026 World Cup, but even before that, we have the 2025 FIFA Club World Cup, 2020
Exactly.
FIFA World Cup that's going to be hosted with Canada, United States, and Mexico. Then there's the 2028 Olympics in LA, and then potentially a 2031 Women's World Cup in the US. So potentially, so a lot of soccer, or as you call football, being played in America. And I was actually pretty shocked when you had mentioned MLS with Saudi Arabia. So, I mean, I'm interested to know from your perspective, what country has the most potential for growth? Saudi, US, or another country?
There are a lot of emerging markets. First of all, I mean, Europe, of course, has been, mm, I would say, home of football. The UEFA Champions League, I think it's probably the competition that every player wants to win, besides the World Cup and the Euro Cup, but it's a competition that everyone around the globe dreams of playing. And having this in consideration, if the leagues and the federations here, especially we have the top five leagues, for example, England, France, Spain, Germany, and Italy, if they continue to be able to increase the competitiveness of their leagues, and a lot of things are contributing to that, like the centralization of TV rights, being able to make sure that the smaller teams always can have also a piece of the cake of TV, etc., or being able to. This is only one of the examples where in Europe we should continue to look at increase the competitiveness. For example, in Portugal, we have the best-selling league in the world. I don't know if you were aware, but no one in the world sells as much as Portugal. Benfica is the best-selling club in the entire globe in the last few years. And then you look into our league, and it's not competitive. You have three big teams, and then the gap between our three big teams and the rest goes into a situation that the league is not so interesting to watch in other leagues. And if you are able to actually raise this competitiveness between these leagues that are growing, I think it can be great. And the same, like I said, these top five leagues need to continue to increase their competitiveness levels and find new ways to engage with fans with these new fan engagement ideas, etc. trying to bring people to the stadiums, trying to increase more the security and also try to extinguish as much as they can violence in football in order to bring more kids, bring more families. And I think this is one of the main factors that Europe can continue at the top. But then at the same time, you have the emerging markets. First of all, I think there are really cool markets that could be looked into the future. India, for example, look at the population that they have. The Indian League finally is trying to attract a bit more talent. They have a bit more money. It's still not there, but I still personally believe that could be one of the leagues of the future if the right people enter there. And when we say India, we say other leagues like Mexico, for example. Mexican league, you almost don't see Mexican players in Europe, and this is only for a particular reason, not because of the lack of quality. You saw now Pachuca going into the final against Real Madrid of the Intercontinental, and they are like 14th place in the Mexican league. So you see the competitiveness there. The only reason why they are not coming is because the salaries are so high in Mexico that actually, since it's still not a league that is being so seen, a lot of clubs, top clubs in Europe, they don't want to pay so much for a Mexican player coming from a Mexican league. So some of them, they prefer to just stay there and earn a lot of money. But it's also a league that if they find ways to bring some of this talent here and continue also to bring talent from abroad into Mexican league can be really interesting. So like I said, there are a lot of interesting leagues. But then of course the two paradigmal, I would say paradigmatic leagues would be, in my opinion, Saudi and MLS. Um, I think, coming back to your question, Kareem, that um, the MLS has a tremendous um, power and has a possibility of growth that is immense. They will have the World Cup, it's true, but at the same time, it's one or maybe the most powerful country in the world. It's a country where people absolutely love sports. The only thing is continuing to try to raise awareness into football, soccer in this case, because still the NBA, the NFL, the NHL, I think it still clearly dominates and has been year after year the typical sports, the basketball, baseball, etc., the sports that people watch the most. If we continue to increase the engagement of fans into football, and I think the World Cup is a great tool for that. I definitely believe that this could help a lot on bringing more money into football, bringing new investors, bringing new ideas, bringing to convince players to come to the MLS maybe at a younger age. The thing is, there is a situation. I'm not criticizing it. It is what it is. But the truth is, it's more difficult for the MLS to attract a top talent from Europe at the highest peak of their career because you have your roof. Of course, we have now these rules of designated players, the rules that made it was possible to bring Messi, for example. But a lot of people see, and a lot of players look at into the MLS like a league that they would love to play and a country where they would love to live. The thing is that they also need to think about their careers and their families. And sometimes, okay, you have some rules for designated players, but you cannot have 11 players in a team that are in the highest peak in Europe because budget-wise, it's just simply not possible. But at the same, on the other side, if you go to Saudi Arabia, you also have a limitation. I think now it's, for example, 8 foreign players for a team, but those 8 foreign players can actually be top quality. You look, for example, to Al Hilal, you look into their 8 foreign players, and they have top players. And I think the tendency is even to increasing more into players more and more in their peak. So that's what I think that also the combination can be tough. What I personally think, and I was even chatting this today with a few contacts that work into American football a lot, and they were saying some of the players also need to understand the longevity of the possibility of doing stuff in the US. Because when you come and sign for a club, it's not only the football. Because the US is still, I would say, the country of dreams. And what they can create also around football in terms of academies, in terms of schools, in terms of investing in clubs, but also in terms of other business connected to football or even other areas, music, fashion, I don't know, some kind of different industries, they can also look at that like, okay, maybe I'm not getting as much money there as I'm getting there, but I'll be in the US. I'll still be playing in a really interesting league that is more and more broadcasted. And this is really important. Messi had, of course, a big impact on that. A lot of people started to watch the MLS because maybe they are watching Inter Miami against Cincinnati, and then they say, "Wow, but look, the Cincinnati team is actually interesting. Maybe tomorrow Cincinnati are playing New York Red Bulls, and I'm still going to watch even Messi is not there." And what I think the US now should focus also is trying to say, okay, Messi will not be there forever, and we need to profit on the fact that we now have Messi, that will now have the World Cup, that now the eyes of football are still located in the US. We have the Club World Cup. All clubs are going to be here. So let's try to use this time as a time to actually make a step forward. And there are a lot of ways to do this. Some people will know way better than me how to profit from this, but definitely I think they need to do it.
100%. And Messi's time is limited in the US, so I agree with you 100%. The last question I want to end off with is in regards to investment, and I'll say my little piece before you dive in is, I'm very bullish on USL Championship. The opportunity to buy into Division Two professional soccer in the United States, the opportunity for land purchase or acquisition, partnership, depending on landowner, a revenue split, mixed use development opportunity from soccer specific stadium, minimum seat capacity 5,000. Obviously, creating an amazing fan experience within the stadium, um, office space, the real estate, the residential, hospitality, commercial opportunity, retail. Really programming, having an opportunity to program a lot of brand new real estate into it from the beginning of a launch of a professional soccer team, I'm very bullish on. And I'm interested to know, I spent a lot of time with One Soccer Nation. Our goal is to give unknown superstars a chance to go pro, and how we plan on doing that is by launching our own professional soccer team. So that's what we're working on, is launching a professional soccer team first in the United States, and then eventually we want to branch off into multi-club ownership, investing in clubs around the world. But I'm interested to know from where you are standing now, um, where do you see the best investment opportunity around the world? And in regards to the consulting firm that you guys have, where are most, a kind of a two in one, where are most investors putting their money?
Mhm. Kareem, first of all, I love that. So tremendous idea. I think it's so cool. Also, I mean, we were able to discuss a little bit already, and we'll do for sure even more the project that you have for the young football players for the creation of a football soccer team. And I'm being a bit how can I say now? I don't want to enter into any issue with the MLS clubs. But I must say this. I had the opportunity to travel a bit into the US a couple of times, and I also have players in the USL. So I'm not saying this just because, but I had the possibility to actually go live, so attending some of the USL games. And I don't say that this is something that we should look at generically, but the connection and the engagement that the USL teams or a lot of them have with their fans is magic and unique. And there are some MLS teams that have more money, more opportunities, hire better players, but at the same time, they simply cannot engage with their communities and with their fans the same way the USL team can do. And I think that instead of feeding this rivalry between MLS and USL, they should try to engage in a way that they would say, okay, let's look into what the MLS teams do well. Let's look into what the USL teams do well, because more and more USL is a platform for players, and more the fans are vibrating with the way they engage with their fans and the kind of stuff they do in their stadiums. And um, it's I really think it's one of the leagues that should be looking into the future and more. Last year we started to see a few transfers already being done with Europe with some money involved. I think this will continue to develop because they are open to bring new types of players from different leagues, from Africa, from here, from there. They are not closed and just narrowed on the path to take. And to be fair, I think MLS should look also into some of the management, get some management tips here and then from what the USL and the USL clubs are doing, and coming more into the investment. I mean, clearly we have also situation of money here. So if you have a lot of money, eventually you'd go to MLS because the franchise requires a lot more money to invest. The USL is a franchise that requires less money, so you go to the USL. But this is not necessarily like this anymore. Also, you have people with a lot of money that they prefer actually to go into the USL, see how things develop there, engage with the community, try to establish a good business there, and they could just go to the MLS, but they prefer to go to the USL. Some because they prefer to start and see how it goes. Some because they actually prefer the system itself. Of course, the revenues are different, but this is again something where the USL teams maybe also need to learn from some of the investors in the MLS how to increase their revenues and putting at the level as they can engage with the community sometimes. But I think the investors will always continue to look into the US because the opportunities are in football, the opportunities are in, of course, winning. I think that also the opportunities are surrounding football in terms of brands, in terms of connected industries. And I think this is something that will continue to come. If I would have an investor with me, I always tell them to look in detail into the MLS and to the USL. This, of course, and European investors are also not only in the US, they continue to look highly into these leagues. There are, of course, a few things that I think that would help because still, I don't think at the sporting side it's so nice to invest in terms of winning titles. What I mean is the promotion relegation system, in my opinion, I know this is difficult too because you are buying a franchise there. You don't want to put so much money into the franchise and having the possibility to go into second division next year. But this takes so much the magic behind it. The magic that a smaller team can actually you have the open cup, the cup, and of course some teams can play each other, but it's not the same thing. Being able that I can invest some money, and if I do an amazing work with the money I invest, maybe next year I can be in MLS and find some new ways of revenue and be able to capitalize on my investment. Or an MLS team say, okay, I put a lot of money on this, but I need to continue to work hard to have the better players, the better facilities, the better people in order to make sure that I will not go down. You cannot have a team that is 4 or 5 consecutive years being the last in the table and just not caring so much because maybe they are putting their expertise into other areas that is not the team, and then in a sporting way it's tough. So one of the ideas would be, of course, promotion relegation, reinventing this a little bit. I would not know exactly. We could have a totally different podcast only about this, finding ways to make this happen with investors being in agreement. Because if you now go to all the MLS owners and you say, you put $700 million in this club, and now next year if you don't perform, you go to second league, they would say, yeah, this will never happen. But let's try to find ways to make it happen.
Absolutely. We'll end it off there. Um, I think we covered a lot. It was great spending more time with you, learning more, and I definitely want to have more conversations with you offline and future collaboration.
For sure.
For now, I just want to thank you for taking the time for being on the One Soccer Nation podcast.
Thank you so much, Kareem. My pleasure, and congratulations on the work you have been doing with the young football players, with preparing for the future a team as well, and also connecting the industry in your podcast. It's great, and it was a pleasure.
Thank you so much.